Hello Internet, Michael Bisock here. Which side are you on politically? Left wing, right wing? What does that mean anyway? What if I told you that by creating the definitions, politicians are controlling the choices that you think you have, and they're determining for you how you should think about politics? Is there a better way? Let's find out. Reference.com says that the general consensus among political scientists is that left wing includes liberals, progressives, socialists, and communists, whereas right wing includes conservatives, traditionalists, reactionaries, and fascists. Other sites, like Diffin.com, show the difference as being between liberal, meaning that you believe in an expanded role of government, and conservative, meaning that you believe in individual liberty. Political science might teach you that there's this sort of French Revolution mythology where the loyalists sat at the right of the king and the progressives to the left, and that may or may not be where we get the left and right concept, or at least the left and right label. You might see the Nolan Chart, or the multi-axis version of the Nolan Chart and think, well, that doesn't really help, does it? How does one idea pair with another idea so that you can find yourself sitting comfortably in one part of the chart? We know that there are many beliefs that don't fit comfortably in the same place, and that's how you get pro-life Democrats and anti-gun Republicans. But then the question remains, why do we even attempt to collect our political decisions together into one place, to one part of the spectrum? What if I told you that you don't? Other people do that for you, and they have a very good reason to do it, at least from their perspective. So let's conduct a thought experiment. You're a parent, and it's after dinner, and you ask your son if he wants to take a bath before he brushes his teeth or after he brushes his teeth. What are his choices? You're conditioning the child to think that his choices are between bath before or bath after. What's the reality, though? His choices include both. His choices include not brushing his teeth. His choices include brushing his teeth while he's in the bath. His choices are endless. He could just refuse to do any of those things. Those are real choices, not to say that there aren't any negative consequences to those choices, or that the positive consequences that you could reach for are endless, but the choices are endless. Politicians and organizations create these definitions and use them over and over and over again to create in your mind a limited scope of viable choices. For instance, should we build a wall or fix immigration? Should we spend more money on military or the same amount but spend it better? Should we outlaw abortion or have it on demand at any time for free? Should we ban assault weapons or ban all weapons? These are not the only choices, but by framing the discussion in this way, they force you to choose. The moment you choose, you're in danger of no longer being able to see the other choices, or that there are other choices. So, left wing and right wing, conservative, progressive, liberal, these are all representations of false choices. Why? Really ask yourself, why? Why is it preferable to box voters into false choices? The answer is control. Sounds a bit like Morpheus, right? Perhaps it's easier to think about it in terms of its opposite. What would our political life look like if we weren't ever presented these false choices? Imagine a world where each choice presented by a politician had to be thought out in its entirety by the entire voting populace. If we lived in a world with infinite resources, this would be easy. Should we do this thing? Well, yes. That's very simple. But we don't live in a world where we have infinite resources, and it's precisely this this limitation on available resources that make our choices difficult. If we had a surplus of $100 million, let's say, how should we use it? Should it improve roads or increase government employee pay or restore school buildings or fund a green energy initiative? How do we decide? We would have to nominate best choices and vote on them, then discuss the pros and cons of each, assigning value to things and debating that value, and it's an endless process. Democracy is difficult when it's absolute. Now that's why we're a representative republic rather than a democracy. The discussion and debate might go on endlessly, losing us the window of opportunity to use that surplus. See, representatives can conduct the discussion and debate in a much faster, much more efficient way, but they need to convince their voters that the choices they make are the right ones. Which brings us back to the original problem. What if your voters see that there are more choices than the ones you give them, or the ones that you've settled on as a politician? That's why it's so important to create false choices, to get you to box yourself into a political party. It's much easier to convince you that they made the right choice if when they present it, the other choice is ridiculous or evil. For instance, if a representative votes to increase the military budget, they would present the choices as we could either increase military budget or be overrun by our enemies. Or maybe we had to increase the military budget, otherwise the soldiers would be living in poverty. These aren't really the choices, but they become the justification not to think too deeply into what the real choices are. This process has caused our conception of the left and right wings to become confused if it was ever clear in the first place. So confused, in fact, that most people, when asked, cannot really define the two wings accurately. There's confusion about progressives and liberals, about conservatives and classical liberals. Which wings do they fall into? Why aren't there clear lines delineating them? This question gets more confused if you look back over the years, and even more confused if you look at other countries, because all these things don't fit together neatly. So I would suggest a different way to look at it. One more in line with the defining characteristics of our political system. If you don't live in the US, you'll have to figure out how this applies to you. The United States was founded under concepts outlined by John Locke and Adam Smith and others, and these weren't new concepts exactly, not in 1776, but they were relatively new, the last 100 years. So you can read about them more in Bernard Bailyn's Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. And what you'll find here is that the political house, I'm going to use that term again, the political house of the United States is built on two wings. The left wing being promote the general welfare, and the right wing being provide for the common defense. These wings undergird and make possible a framework for free market capitalism, which in turn holds up individual liberty, and which in turn protects private property. This is the proper house of American politics. Let's think about that for a moment. We come together as people to form a society because we need society to not to survive, but to protect the time, talent, energy, and resources and effort that we invest into life. We can survive individually by ourselves, but what good is let's say a field of wheat if someone can come and take it right before harvest? So we form society to protect our individual efforts, giving those efforts value. Without protection of private property, working toward anything beyond simple subsistence, beyond just survival, is fruitless. For this reason, protection of private property is the purpose of coming together of people to form society. You'll see that in Adam Smith. You'll see that in John Locke. So to ensure this protection of private property, the rules which govern society are designed to ensure one simple thing: preserve an individual's liberty. Freedom to choose your own path. Freedom to do what you choose with your property. Freedom to do whatever you choose, because anything less would be detrimental to the protection of private property and which in turn would make society untenable. The only restrictions to this freedom are that it cannot infringe upon the freedom of others. So then why free market capitalism? We've gone protection of private property, individual liberty. Why free market capitalism? Why is it the thing that holds up individual liberty and protection of private property? Why is that the bottom story, just above the left and the right wings of the House? The answer is very simple, and you can see it over and over again proven throughout the last 500 years of history. No other system can support individual liberty. Since what we create with our time, talent, and energy is not the same from person to person, we have only a few workable choices. If the system directs the labor, an individual is not free to choose how their labor should be used. If the state owns the property, the individual can own nothing and cannot choose what to do with anything. Only a free market can support individual liberty, and only individual liberty can support private property, and only private property can support society. In a free market, a person can exchange the product of their time, talent, and energy for the product of someone else's time, talent, and energy. One is never forced to give up their own property or sacrifice their liberty. So, you see, there's no finite resource to discuss yet. Those three things are shared by all. Those three concepts are shared by all. There are no should we do this or that decisions yet when it comes to free market capitalism, individual liberty, and private property. This brings us down to the left and right wings and how they support the rest of the House. Here's where all the choices exist in government. If given a finite resource, which should you spend it on? More general welfare or more common defense? Both of them support equally the rest of the House. For example, building a port increases the flow of goods from the point of production to the point of sale, and that costs money, but improves the free market for everyone. On the other hand, protecting our shipping lines costs money in the form of a navy, but loss of produce costs everyone money. So here's the true difference between left and right wing. If given a finite resource, like tax revenue, do you spend it on promoting the general welfare, or do you spend it on providing for the common defense? Take that in, think about it. Think about how it doesn't really fit into the difference between Democrats and Republicans. Think about how these are the real choices, and they must be made by Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, etc. But think about how these are real choices, difficult choices. That is why false choices are presented. That is why the conceptions we have been given of left and right wing are vague, confused, characterized more by labels than ideas. Fascists are right wing, communist Nazis are left wing, that sort of thing. So then you have to ask yourself, which should you be? Are you left wing? Do you think that all the resources should be spent on promoting the general welfare? If so, what happens when an enemy attacks? What happens when criminals rape and murder and steal and destroy the general welfare? Are you right wing? Should we create a massive army and navy and police force that prevents any and all crime or incursion by outside forces? But what then would we be protecting? A nation with nothing not built by the state? Think North Korea. Being left or right wing under this proper conception of the political house of the United States is destructive. This is why when people ask me what my politics are, I tell them I'm a constitutional centrist. I try to stand firmly in the middle between promote the general welfare and provide for the common defense. To be otherwise, I think, is foolish. What do you think? Is this the proper way, you think, to conceptualize our political system? Is there a better way? Do you feel like the choices you've been given by politicians have been true, accurate, or false? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you like this video, please click like so that I know that you like it and I can make more like it. If you like these videos, click subscribe. There's a button in the shape of a bell right next to the subscribe button that'll let you know. It'll notify you when I make new things. I really appreciate your support. Be safe, and I hope to see you soon.